Does your company offer an ESOP? And if so, what should you know about it? Hi, I'm Garrett Ray, financial planner here at the Wealth Guardians and the Ray Financial Group.
And I'm Brice Payne, and you've entered The Vault, the Wealth Guardians video series on all things pertaining to retirement planning. In this episode, we're going to talk about ESOPs, what an ESOP is, how an ESOP works, how to cash out of one, and the types of rewards that are associated with one. I'll bring your attention, like I always do, to these like and subscribe buttons down below the screen there. Go ahead and click on those if you want to catch future episodes of The Vault with Doug, Garrett, and myself. And let's go ahead and start into this episode. Garrett, employer stock option plans.
Yeah, so what is an ESOP? An employee stock ownership plan. And essentially what this is, it's an employee benefit that the attempt there is to give workers actual ownership interest in their company in the form of shares of stock. Sometimes these stocks can be publicly traded. Sometimes they're privately owned if it's a private company. Effectively, ESOPs give the sponsoring company, which is also selling those shares back to employees and their participants, tax benefits. So these are qualified plans in the most part. They are also used by employers as kind of a motivational tool to align the interests of the company with the personal interests of their employees. So by giving them ownership in the company goals and individual goals are at least attempted to be aligned there.
Okay, so that's kind of what they are and how they work. How would you cash one out if you wanted to?
Well, so if you wanted to cash one out, typically the companies will issue these shares on a vesting plan.
Right.
It sounds kind of fancy, but effectively what that means is that employers are going to give employees rights to this stock ownership, typically over time. Sometimes they can also be gated by if you hit certain performance metrics. So let's say it was, annual sales or amount of marketing dollars that turned into deals. So it can either be, hey, we're going to give you X number of shares every year for your first 4 years of employment. It could also look like if you hit a certain number of sales goals, then you would get awarded additional shares, that sort of thing. So that's how you acquire shares. Cashing out can be a little bit tricky. So effectively, the way that most ESOPs are set up is that essentially you can never take the shares with you, but you can take out the cash or the lump sum option on a couple of different things. One, if you retire from the company. Two, if you pass away, unfortunately. You can also, most ESOPs, you can retain a portion of that cash value if you simply just leave the company. Let's say it wasn't like a termination, but you just left. The other possibility is if you become disabled and you can't work anymore. So that's how you're eligible to cash out. Normally, it works just like a 401k plan where if we're talking about distributions, distributions are rarely permitted to people that are under 59 and a half. It could be as low as 55, kind of like a 401k plan. But if you are going to take a distribution before that age kind of cutoff, then there's going to be, of course, the 10% tax penalty like you would experience with a 401k.
Gotcha.
So you essentially go through a vesting period of acquiring these shares, either through just time with the company or through different performance metrics. And then just like a 401k, it's kind of age limited as to when you can take distributions, but it's still an asset that you hold just like a 401k that grows throughout your career. So that's effectively how you would look to cash out of an ESOP.
Okay. All right. What else do we want to cover about them?
Well, we need to talk about how one gets awards inside the ESOP.
All right.
So typically those can come over multiple different kind of options to you inside the ESOP, or, can have multiple different options. So one is a direct stock purchase plan, where this lets employees purchase shares of their company with personal money. So they're going to contribute some of their own personal money. They're a big believer in the company. They buy additional shares and they grow within the ESOP plan themselves. One other one is called a restricted stock plan. So this gives employees rights to ownership of shares as a gift, or potentially if they meet like restrictions on them, if they accomplish that sales goal, then they'll get gifted restricted shares inside the ESOP that they can then later in life cash out at an appreciated value.
Gotcha. Okay.
A few of them do offer stock options. So if it's a publicly traded stock, then you've got, an exercise window where you can purchase the shares at a fixed price. And then it's up to the performance of that company's stock in the markets. If it goes up, well, then you just made one heck of a deal for yourself. If it goes down, well, you took on the risk of that company because you are now, of course, are part owner of that company.
All right.
There is something called a phantom stock option. So this can be actually pretty attractive, where what the company will do is they'll give you actually a cash bonus. This is typically done for performance goals that are met, where they will value your cash bonus off of X number of shares inside the ESOP.
Okay.
So the shares remain inside the ESOP, but you're given an upfront cash bonus towards your account based on, the value of 10 shares or whatever that may be. And then lastly, stock appreciation rights. This basically is mostly reserved for folks who are looking to retire from a company. So they're going to compensate that employee who's kind of outgoing based on the number of shares they have appreciated throughout their career. Most of the time, this is not paid out lump sum. This is paid out over a period of successive years. You see these pretty often with executive deferred comp plans, which then they basically take the value of that ESOP and then pay them out over a series of years. So those are some of the ways that you can get into an ESOP and what your options are inside of it.
But it all depends. All these rules are spelled out differently on each company's ESOP.
Yeah, so the disclaimer as we kind of close out this episode is always make sure to read the fine print and the details about your ESOP. If you have questions about, hey, what does this look like as far as my vesting period? What does this look like if I want to take a distribution? 2 resources I would go to. First and foremost, go to your company's benefits manager. He or she should be able to explain the ESOP pretty well. And if you're working with a financial planner, obviously let them know that you have an ESOP available to you, and he or she can take a look at the options you have inside the ESOP, how many vested shares you have, and if that makes, some additional planning considerations for your retirement.
Well, so basically it's a type of 401k.
Yep.
But it's company stock only, and then all the little rules about how you can buy into it and how you can cash out of it are just varied company to company.
Absolutely. Yeah, the company gets to set that as well.
Very good. All right. So one other question for you. If you wanted to buy shares on your own, would that still be pre-tax monies, or could you buy them with after-tax monies and still be part of the ESOP plan?
So that would be a purchase with most commonly with after-tax monies, but then the appreciation there within is basically taxed.
Okay.
So you get that. Yeah.
All right. Very good. Well, all right. So there you go. Now you've got a crash course in ESOPs, employee stock ownership plan, not options.
Yep.
And thank you for joining us on this episode of The Vault. Again, I'll bring your attention to these like and subscribe buttons down below there. Go ahead and click on those if you want to catch future episodes with us. That's going to wrap it up for this episode. I'm Brice Payne.
And I'm Garrett Ray.
And this has been The Vault.